So I want to tell you how scandalous these landlord companies, the bigger ones, are. So this past month, there were two rent relief programs in the city of Los Angeles, and one was for the county, I believe, of Los Angeles. And so you had to pretty much sign up. You could sign up by phone or online. And if you were able to fit the requirements, then they enter your information in a lottery. Now, if you get picked in that lottery, depending upon your landlord, they'd have to participate in sending documents back to them, letting them know that you actually live in your unit, and that they were gonna carry out participation in helping you get the subsidies that you need to stay in your unit. So one of them only paid, I think, as much as 2,000, and 2,000 may not be enough for someone who's really 3 or 4 months behind. The other one, however, which was 211 LA, I believe, paid up to $10,000. Now, what these people have done is very helpful, but also here's the problem with this. Not everybody's going to get picked in the lottery. So there's still relatively a lot of people that are going to wind up by the end of December, beginning of January. They're going to end up getting evicted or facing eviction. The other thing that is a problem is some of these landlords, all they want is money. So if you qualify for the one that's 2,000, they may say, no, you should apply for the one that's 10,000 so that they can receive more money. Now, they say it's based on your zip code or your area code or whatever, but I believe the landlords are not good at sending back the paperwork. Now, there was one lady I saw, and this was a video that she had been on an interview, and I guess this was about people who were facing eviction. And this woman said she participated in one of these programs, but it was for another, it wasn't in California, it was outside of California, because all the different cities or metropolitan cities have certain rent relief programs. So this woman had to get the landlord to sign a W-9 or a W, it was somewhere along the lines of paperwork that she tried to get her landlord to sign, and the landlord refused to sign it and refused to participate. That is the other problem that some people might have faced with these rent relief programs. The landlords sometimes won't participate and they won't finish the paperwork in order for people to stay in their units, because there may have been a problem with that tenant where they were grossly behind in their rent. So even if they do get 10,000, I know personally in a place where a couple is living, they owed $15,000. They were behind in rent. Now, if the program that offers 10,000 was offered to them, and now they owe a lot more. That was since March of this year. It's more than 15,000 that they owe, and so they're probably owing like maybe 20. It could be as much as like maybe 30,000 now. 10,000 is not going to cover all of that. Some people are extremely behind in rent. Now, what I've learned is some people are behind because they lost jobs. and they were like a couple of months behind, but now they're many months behind because of this rent freeze. It didn't offer them or the landlords any reprieve. So now the problem that is going to be faced is a lot of these people that either were not picked for these rent relief programs or they were picked. Their landlord company, depending on who those landlords are, may have some ill feelings towards them and may not participate, even though you got picked for the lottery. So I know some people out there are faced with this. There's still going to be a tsunami of people who owe a lot of back rent and they're not going to be able to come up with it because they don't have either a job yet, or even if they had a job, they're not going to be able to have enough time to catch up by the time January approaches of 2021. And I believe what has happened through all of this is that this, in some ways, other than just trying to act as though the person is helping, I think the person is using this as the president is using this by saying he's helping people when he's really not helping. He's not giving a lot of money to the renters and to the landlord companies and the smaller landlords. What's going to wind up happening is a lot of people are going to be homeless. And they're going to have clinics for people who are grossly behind in their rent and need a place to stay. And there are going to be families that are going to be hit hard with this come the end of December, the beginning of January of next year. I believe this has been halted because of the elections. And whoever is either elected, that's the person who's going to be faced with this. And how they see fit, I believe it could go either way. What's going to happen is they're going to provide maybe lawyers' clinics for people to try to relocate if they're faced with homelessness. Or you're going to have a person that can't handle all of the people who are evicted and all of the landlords that are affected by this rent freeze, because there are millions of people that are going to be still affected by this. I really don't see that this is going to really play out well in either case. And so I just wanted to remind that this rent pandemic freeze on the rent didn't provide everyone with the safety net that people are thinking. Some people may have gotten some help. So there might be some people that may have gotten some help. However, that is not everybody's situation. Some people could have got help, but the landlord didn't participate. They refused to participate. Also, you got to realize that some landlords, there's a few that are considerate and they try to hold out and they try to give you the benefit of the doubt, while there's others that are upset because they're not being able to be provided the rent, and so it puts them further behind. Then you have these big commercial landlord companies who they may not be as in bad a shape as the smaller landlords, and they just operate like a business, so they don't have a lot of empathy for the renters. They look at it as money, money, money. And so they tack on late fees, however, whatever, to pretty much stick the renters with an excess amount of back rent owed. And so they pretty much put low income people that are in these neighborhoods that where they don't make a lot of money in a situation where they're rent burdened. And that was happening way before the pandemic. And so a lot of times if you don't come up with all of the rent money on time, sometimes they don't have any discretion or any empathy, and they'll tack on an extra $200 or $300 or $400 more dollars that puts you further behind in rent. And so a lot of them have those tactics. A lot of the landlords that are big companies use those tactics to try to make people stuck so that you can't even save money to move out of a situation like that. So you might have to just like break your lease, or you might have to just like maybe put a deposit on another place and then slowly move your stuff out and then slowly pay on the rent until you can give them a notice and say, hey, I'm not there anymore. However you do that, but it's like they try to entrap people in apartment buildings so that you are in a predicament where you're rent burden. And so I know firsthand. And so a lot of times they do that in the neighborhoods where it's a lot of people that are black or Hispanic, and they work the essential working jobs. And so it puts you at risk. And so some people, here's the other thing that people were faced with, not everybody received unemployment. So that caused a lot of people to be behind in rent because they weren't able to pay their bills, and when they did get any money, they were already far behind. So they just used it for maybe the utilities and to provide food for their family. And so a lot of people are in a situation, and they're going to be in a worse situation come the end of this year and the beginning of next. And you have smaller landlord companies, maybe smaller landlords who are not big commercialized company landlords that are going to be in a lot of trouble as well if they're not already, because there have been articles that have been coming out about that. And so there's a lot of chaos going on with the, people who feel that they're being targeted, racially profiled. There's a lot of shootings. There were shootings here in South LA of some young men. There have been shootings even of homeless black people. And so there has been a lot of things that have been happening. Protesters that have been shot at. And it doesn't matter if the person is black or white. There have been white protesters that have been trying to stand up for the rights of people, and they have been murdered, and wrongfully killed. And so it's sanctioned killing is what I said it is. And I believe even for the white protesters, it's unfair because like I said, and I said this in several videos, that all white people aren't filthy rich. And so you have some white people that are living low income and living in low income communities, and they may also be suffering from profiling in a different way, but they're also oppressed because they don't have a lot of money, and they're looked at as if they're supposed to be on the other side of the fence and in agreement with some of these extreme groups like the Proud Boys and all these other groups that have been coming out to these places with rifles. And these people wind up getting killed just because they want to have some kind of peace in the world, and they're looking for some kind of unity, and they're trying to see if they can pretty much close the gap of division that has been going on for quite some time. And so that's the unfortunate part. It's just like what happened out in, I believe, Charleston, um, where you had the protests, and then you had people that were murdered or ran over by cars. That has been happening in other locations where people have been run over or hit by cars because they're using their freedom of speech, and they've been now targeting protesters of all walks of life. And so now we have this issue with people who could possibly be faced with not having a place to stay. Now, it used to be just the 2008 issue where you had people who were reverse redline, where they were in houses, but the houses were so expensive, and it started off where they were able to pay their mortgage, and all of a sudden they had all this interest and all these, it had an adjustable rate mortgage, and it just pretty much ballooned into something they couldn't pay for. And the banks were bailed out, But the people weren't bailed out. The people lost their homes and wound up in these apartments. Low income apartments is what they could afford because some of them either could no longer afford the house, they foreclosed on them, they either went bankrupt. Now we're faced with this horrible reality again. These rent relief programs, while they may seem good and helpful for some, not everybody's going to get the help that they think they're going to receive. And so we're still looking at a large groups, many people who are going to be hit hard with eviction come. Some already are getting evicted, but come December, you think these protests are bad now? Wait till December and January comes when you have a mass amount of people that are just out in the street with no place to go, and they have kids and they have families and they lost their job and they have not been able to recover any money to cover their rent. It is going to be a mess. Until they're able to try to figure out how to help everybody, this is not looking good at all. So having said that, I'm going to let this video go, but this is the website 211LA, and so they had offered, this was the one that offered the $10,000, and you didn't even have to be really behind in your rent, is what I heard. You could be somebody that just, your rent burden and you live with low income, and you might have gotten a lump sum of money to help you for the end of the year, because even if you're not totally grossly behind in rent, you might be struggling to pay your utilities and to provide food for your family. And the jobs the hours are shorter, so you're not receiving as much income, so your income is affected like that. So it may take you longer to come up with the rent. There could be many things going on at play here. There also was the other program, which was also a rent relief program. It says renter assistant application now is closed. Most of them are closed because you had to be in a lottery in order, and get picked in a lottery in order to be selected so that they could give you the $2,000. And this one right here was renter's assistance, and it was through the city of Los Angeles. And so this was a program that was also offered between the months of July 13 to the month of July 17. So that application um, was there, and anybody could go online or they could go on the phone and they could sign up for it. But once you did that, you'd have to get picked in the lottery. And once you get picked in the lottery, then you're supposed to fill out paperwork, send it in, and then they ask you a couple of questions, and then your landlord is supposed to participate in the rest of the program. However, I've been hearing some people's landlords are not willing to participate. They won't sign documents, and who knows what that is all about. Some of it, I believe, is a tactic because they want to be able to evict certain people that might have been problem tenants on behalf of the landlords that aren't trying to create any malice. They might be trying to get rid of problem tenants, and so they will not help them because those people have probably created a lot of havoc in the buildings or the places that they've stayed, and they might have been a problem prior to the pandemic. However, there are some people who they just fell on hard times because of the pandemic. Their job closed down permanently, and so you have some landlords who are understanding and others who just aren't. So having said that, I'm going to let this video go. I would say that this is going to be a big crisis that we're going to be faced with the end of the year, beginning of next year. And that's going to be worse than 2008 foreclosures. I think a lot worse, because you also have people who are homeowners that have not been paying their mortgages. They had a freeze on their mortgages as well. And you had some banks that froze some of the mortgage payments to where they don't have to pay. They can, for the whole 12 months, they don't have to pay. And so that sounds like this is going to be 2008 2.0 or 3.0. It's going to be bad. It's not only the homeowners, but it's also the renters and some of the landlords that are going to be hit with this crisis of not having any money. And so this is worse than the Great Depression. So having said that, I'm going to let this go so that you might want to keep that in mind. Keep your eyes open for these events because they are going to affect millions and millions of people and families, unfortunately. Thanks for listening.